you start writing articles and submit them to the paper each week so we can educate people on this whole subject? And I said, you bet. And so I did that for the past, almost 2 years, and then decided to write the book. But as I was writing, I figured, well, I need to aim this book at the elected officials, regardless of party, and it's going to have to be a quick and easy read that people can use for a quick reference. It's got all the the real gripping quotes, the hard facts. It's got all the websites listed, everything that a person needs to know and be able to read through real quickly and get a good understanding of what's going on. And that's exactly what has happened. It's such an easy read. One lady read it in a whole afternoon. So I went, perfect, because I could have written 10 or 12 books. I mean, you do 6 solid years worth of research on this stuff. I probably could have, gone into enough detail to just bore people right into sleep, but I wanted to keep it short and simple because we all know elected officials don't really like to read stuff anyway, right? So we got to look at attention span here. And so it's kind of picking up speed with people that are wanting to buy it in bulk to provide to their elected officials. And that's happening around the nation right now. People are ordering them in bulk and just flat out giving them to them, and saying, you need to look at this and understand it. And while it explains the whole issue, the whole last chapter is devoted to actions that remedy the situation. So it's not just whining and complaining, it's a description of the problem as well as solutions that have already worked in different areas through cities, counties, and states. And it includes Alabama's latest bill. I don't know if all of you are familiar with Alabama's Bill 477. If you're not, it was passed just this year in May. And so far, that piece of legislation is probably the most gripping, effective piece of legislation in the nation against Agenda 21 right now, where they are demanding that all the agencies go through due process in regards to any property rights issue at all, where the agencies are just slithering around through the dark and coming up underneath, in the shadows, and they're able to do this regulatory taking like they were going to try to do to us, like they've done to lots of farmers over on our side already. And so if we've got something with some teeth to force them to due process, because that was essentially what I was trying to do with the agent on the phone, was force him into due process, saying, I'm not going to do this without a court order. And him just laughing in the face, of, oh, that's not the way we work. And so if we can come back with due process and say, oh, yes, it is, that's exactly the way it works, because we were just able to follow Alabama, and we just passed it right here in Washington State. And so there's all the information in the last chapter for the Alabama bill. And we're over on the very last table if you're interested in picking up a copy. And I've also got copies of that Alabama bill attached to a letter to your reps and senators. It's a letter of introduction explaining how and why. And if you would like to, I would really kind of like to see a pledge of, bravery, courage. Let's stand up. Let's take the actions that we can take. I'm not calling you to arms. I'm calling you to a bill, okay, where we can all work together. And we're some of the most active, knowledgeable people in the state right now. And we're the ones that are going to have to make the next step. And so if you would pick up a copy of that bill and essentially promise yourself that you'll either email it to your reps and your senators, or you'll actually take it into their office and discuss it with them. I don't know, give them a copy of the book too so they can read about it. And I'm pushing for getting a copy of the Alabama bill in the winter session of 2013. And so hopefully, yeah.
Okay, now what kind of got me smoldering under the collar is when the government started claiming underground water so they could put meters on private wells, something else that we need to be alert to.
Well, exactly. And if we have due process, it might sound insignificant, but it's going to put the kibosh on a lot of their plans, and let me tell you right now, because if you can hold that in front of their face and say, you have no right, you take this to court, you get a jury to prove it, and if you can get a full conviction in a court with a jury, then you can come back and start talking to me about this. But let me tell you, there was as many people as have lost their land already and just turned over like a cowardly dog. It just kind of makes me sick, you know. It's unfortunate because they don't even understand what their rights are. They just think, oh, that's big and scary, and they're intimidated, and they just turn right over. And there's one guy that stood up over on that area, in my area, that he had about 3,500 acres of more just prime grazing land. It's all sub-irrigated, gorgeous, and he ran about 2,500 head of cattle on it. And when you drive by this, it looked like a golf course. I mean, it's gorgeous out there. They've got plenty of room, free air, all this. Well, the DOE came to him also, and they said they started pulling the garbage of, you're going to have to fence it all off back to, oh, thank you. This is a copy of that book, by the way. You're going to have to fence this off, 100 feet this year, and of course they're not telling him this, 300 feet the next year, 500 feet the next year, and this essentially would have bankrupted him. And so he said, well, because his property ran along the Colville River, and they said, well, you're polluting the water. Your cows are polluting the water. And he said, okay, well, you're going to take some water tests, so am I. And so every time they went to take water tests where the water went into his property and where it went out of his property, he was right there. And not only did he just take the water tests, he stayed with his sample. He took it himself. He went with the DOE to the water testers. He stayed with the sample till it was tested and got it back in his hand, so that there was no sneaky sleight of hand garbage going on like happens a lot. And so since he stayed with his samples and he continued to do that through the whole year, at the end of the year, you're not going to guess what happened. Those tests all came back showing that water was 300% cleaner when it left his property than when it came into his property. and so the DOE just kind of shut up and disappeared. And he said, well, so why am I getting polluted water on my land? and they wouldn't investigate it. And do you know why? Because upstream from him is property that they took over and turned back into like a wetland, a marshy wetland. It was man-made, and it's got all these little man-made islands. And what happens in that situation is you get an anaerobic situation where it can't kill the bacteria. The grass grows so tall that it's just mosquito infested. It's nasty, and it pollutes the water. And so here he is. He's got this, basically like a filtration system going on his place, and now they can't touch him. But that's been their whole thing the whole time is, oh, you've got livestock, you're ruining the world, right? And so what's funny is that they don't understand that the cow has just taken the niche of buffalo. I mean, they've essentially got the same shape and size of hoof, and you can all remember hearing how many millions of buffalo used to exist in herds as they go everywhere, and how interesting that God's ecosystem works without the Department of Ecology, right? And the fact that you can darn well bet all those millions of buffalo were in and out of that water. I mean, was anybody there? Were the Indians telling him, "Hey, shoot, get out of there"? You're making everything out. You're killing the fish. There was none of that going on. It still works. They didn't wipe out the fish. They didn't destroy everything. In essence, they were making everything better because they're able to graze it down, fertilize it. It feeds the birds, the insects. Everything works just the way it's supposed to. It keeps the water clean. Yeah, imagine that, and the water's clean, the fish are happy, everybody's happy, And so here we've got the same thing happening. They teach you this in wildlife biology, and each animal has a niche. You can replace one animal from that niche with another animal of the same niche, and it basically will occupy the same job. And so essentially,
see that part of your education?
Yes, exactly. It all works together. What a shock!
Everything you took.
Yeah, I got something out of it after all. And so as it works, the cattlemen turn out to be doing us a service, not a disservice. They're keeping the water cleaner, but wow, is the Department of Ecology mad about that? Here they are, just hoping everybody will believe that we've got one ecological disaster after another happening out there because we're all mindless idiots that, just want to dump all our sewage in the creek. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And of course, we know that's their MO anyway. They love stuff that's the farthest from the truth. So, yeah.
Okay, they've been trying to take my $500. I think 500. I don't remember the exact number to have our septic tank inspected every year. And we rejected that because we had no state-of-the-art septic tank there, and we refused to do it.
Keep refusing it because that's your right, and the more you cower, the more they attack, and essentially, when you start standing up and you get other people inspired to start standing up, guess who's behind you? God's going to be behind you, because think about this story. Biblically, who did God rely on in the most impossible odds? He relied on David. Wasn't he small and little and almost insignificant to everybody else? Who else did he rely on? He relied on Gideon. Do all of you know the story of Gideon? Where, here he is, those that don't know, here he is, what was he considered? The grumpy farmer. And they were being oppressed by the Midianites. And not only was Gideon an oppressed farmer, he was the lowest man on the oppressed farmer's end, too. I mean, he didn't even have respect of his peers, basically. But he was smart enough to, when the Midianites would come in at harvest time and steal all their harvest, he was smart enough to cut it while it was still green and they weren't there, and then he'd go stash it away in a cave. And so I think God probably went, oh, well, at least he's smart, And so he went in there and he said to Gideon, he said, I need you to conquer the Midianites, army of 25,000 people. And Gideon went, are you kidding? Here he is, a grumpy farmer. He didn't even really want to be bothered. And plus, they're basically starving all the time. And he's the lowest of the lowest on the totem pole. And he said, I don't know anything about battling. I don't know anything about wars. Nobody even really likes me that much. And how am I going to get these people to follow me, right? And he says, you don't worry. Basically, I've got your back. And so he talks him into it. And they start going along, and he says, I'm going to have you pull together 10,000 men. And he was able to pull 10,000 men together with God's help. And then what I found most interesting was God said to him, we're going to not use that 10,000 men. We're going to use 300 men. And Gideon went, oh, okay, great. Okay, first of all, it was bad enough. There was going to be 10,000 of us going against 25,000. Now you're saying 300 of us going against 25,000? I think that's, you could tell he was just like, no way. and God said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, he basically said, I would rather have 300 brave men than 10,000 cowards. And we're going to go through, and I'll show you which of these 10,000 men are the brave 300, and those are the ones you're going to take. And so they all went to this place to drink, and he said, those that drink like animals, those are not the ones we want. The ones that cup the water, those are the ones we want. Those are the brave men, which also signifies that he likes a civil man. He likes somebody with some civility, some manners, some, you know, and bravery. He can't stand a coward. So I think that, like in our example, if God sees that you're brave enough to stand up even against the most atrocious odds, he will help you. Because who are we? We are nobody, and the Department of Ecology has, you know, empires of wealth behind them. And so he helped us. And so that's my own testimony. And my advice to each one of you, no matter how insignificant you think you are, it's just not true. You stand up, you be brave, you be courageous, because that was how God designed us to be in the first place. And obviously, everybody that's here probably really doesn't need that message, because we already are the brave people. We're already taking a stand. And so I'm encouraging each of you, if you can, just stop by over there, pick up a copy of that bill. We actually aren't going to be here that long because we've got to leave early in order to be able to get back. My husband works early. He gets up at 3 in the morning. So anyway, I just want to really encourage you, and where we can take an action, we need to take the action now. So thank you.
I'm thinking helpful. Whoa.
That was Obama.
Helpful on into the future is folks being able to network with other people. Oh,
Helpful on into the future.
Mr. Microphone.
Yeah, well, it works. Is people being able to network with people like yourself who've had some success. So helpful into the future is to set up networking or invite people to contact. Like the book is helpful, but maybe even contacting one of these two or three people that had success in similar circumstances.
Right. I've got at our table, I've got a list for people to write their names and email address, as well as a bookmarker with my email address on it, so that we can network and I can keep everybody posted on progress. I've already got 3 or 4 other people that are bringing this copy of the bill to their own reps, and they already have seen it. And so we need to coordinate, and I can coordinate with everybody contacting me. I'll send them updates and emails. We'll get this ball rolling. So, yeah. You bet. Oh, one last question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We had our septic pump in '96, and then we did not have it pumped again for some time, maybe a year ago. And at any rate, the man who came to pump our septic said, "I am quitting today. You will be my last customer." He said they are ripping off the people because the bacteria will not start until 3 years after you first get it pumped. And they were asking him to do it every year.
Right.
And so he quit. I thought that was quite interesting.
I have a good friend that's like, well, Gloria Clark knows him as well, Steve Neugebauer. He's over on this side. He's in Clay Elam, right? And Clay Elam. And Duval. Is that where it is? Okay. Okay. So you guys already know him. Yeah. He'll basically lay it right out there. He points out that most of the stuff they do isn't by the book. Half of it's illegal. You know, and so when they're pushing this stuff, it's a matter of actually standing up and calling them on it.
It's a monopoly too.
Yeah, exactly. There's no oversight on what they're doing. The oversight is basically what this due process bill would actually attack. You know, it would actually provide oversight. So anyway.
On the subject of Steve Neugebauer, and he's talking about legislation. According to Washington state law, there is a geologist licensing board, and only licensed hydrogeologists are legally allowed to designate wetlands. The Department of Ecology has been completely flaunting that law. The people that they have, what are called wetland scientists, have frequently at most a couple weeks, they have this fiction that the first 18 inches of ground is all that they check. Now, there's a lot more to wetland science. It's very deep. They're pushing a bill right now. Steve Neugebauer and his partner, actually Ed Kilduff, are pushing the Washington State the governor's office to enforce that law, and there is a law in the books, and I wish I could remember it, or a bill being pushed to force them to honor that law. You will have an infinitely fewer number of designated wetlands. There are almost no actual wetlands in this state. Wetlands are scientifically, specifically defined, and there are almost none in this state. It's a fraud.
Yeah, yes, it is. Everything they're doing is a fraud.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Renee.
Thank you.